give us a talk.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's a great honor and a privilege to receive that first medal, and I'll always treasure it and treasure my association with the Mises Institute. And I also want to commend the Mises Institute for the noble work you do. It takes courage, tenacity, and vigilance in this world to stake out the positions that you do uncompromisingly over a long period of time. But I will say this, that having been associated with many organizations, as my friend Dr. William Peterson would say, they're mostly ephemeral. And in times like this, that are so turbulent when the welfare state is growing, we can only look to the Mises Institute for real good, solid thinking, which they've always had and often been ignored. Going back to Dr. Mises and his understanding of entrepreneurship, and I commend Dr. Woods and Dr. Thornton for your talks today. I wish we could record those. Okay, and if every high school student knew that much, it would be 100 times fold over what they are going to learn in high school or learn in college. So somehow together we have to figure out a way, because that is a beautiful message, that it's not only good for society, but it's moral and it's right, and there's no alternative whatsoever. We must continue with these free market concepts because, as we know, both the populist politicians and commentators, as we were talking about earlier, are barraging the people daily with bad information. Peaceful free markets, it's evident what they produce. Just traveling around the country this week, and you see this abundance of buildings and people and productivities and more technologies than we could ever personally understand. And you see this huge benefit for society and personal growth. I want to go through just a short history of Captive Air, which is a little different entrepreneurial story than some. We think in terms of entrepreneurs and venture capitalists marrying and having an IPO and living happily ever after. Captive Air was started originally as Atlantic Fire Systems back in 1979. And my total invested capital was $1,300. And at no time in the history of the company was there any other money invested in the company, no vulture capital, venture capital. So it was the grinded out type entrepreneurial experience, which in many ways I recommend, primarily because as a young person in a new industry, you certainly don't have all the answers. And if you have a lot of capital, you're going to go down a lot of incorrect roads. But having no capital, you can't afford to go down any wrong roads, or you'll not come back. I initially was a distributor for the Ansel Company, and I used to have this discussion with the comptroller because we were always late paying our bill, and he says, you should have been properly capitalized and we wouldn't have to go through these discussions. And I said, I'm going to prove to you that this is the right way to do it. It's maybe not the recommended way, but I don't have any more capital, and this is the way it has to be done. And we've turned out to be the largest customer of Ansel, I think, in their history for commercial restaurant systems. So it did work out in the long term. By 1979, this little company that I really started to make a living, hoping to be a little bit more than that, was $1 million in sales. And still had cash flow problems as we moved into 1981. Anybody that can remember that year, 1980, were pretty tough years for the economy, very austere. We were able to borrow some money from a bank at that time, but the problem was the interest rate was 24%. So it was pretty tough, but I think these are all important parts of the entrepreneurial experience, is that you must go through gut-wrenching, difficult experiences because they're going to prepare you for future experiences. And if it's too easy, you're going to make too many mistakes, and in the long run, you might not make it. By the early 80s, we were installing some kitchen hoods and decided that maybe this would be the route to go, not just do the fire system, but integrate the whole kitchen hood systems. So we bought a little sheet metal shop, started to make some little hoods. Crude as they were, I actually believed that we could be a big player in this industry. Stupid thought, but I kept it for a long period of time, and it worked out. So I think thinking high-minded, knowing that you're only a speck on the horizon, you can accomplish amazing things if you're willing to stay with them over a very long period of time. So by 1984, we got rid of the fire system company. We continued to install fire systems in restaurants. And actually by 1984, had some financial stability, which was very unusual for the company. If we got to that period at the end of 1981, I think this is instructive. 5 years after the company was started, it was in terrible financial shape because people weren't paying their bills on time, cash flow was a problem, and basically we just hung on and waited for better times, which began in 1982. If you remember the end of the recession, we started to move upward. But by 1984, we were stabilized. We had a normal bank loan. And by 1989, we were able to buy a little technology company called Aquamatic that makes water wash hoods. It still has not emerged as a leading technology, but it was another piece of technology that we had that we could compete for larger projects. And basically, most all of the growth of Captive Air has been organic growth, which is typically of growth companies. But in 1997, we acquired a small company called Rupp Industries that made makeup air systems. So now we're not only in kitchen ventilation, makeup air systems, we were gaining more technologies. So most of our acquisitions were not for sales, but for technologies. And that helped advance the company more quickly than it would have gone otherwise. One of the things that I do for our salespeople periodically is I list the most important decisions over the last 20 years. And then I bring it to their attention. If you had voted on that day in whatever year it was to go with this decision, would have you done it? And universally, I know that they would have all voted no. So one of the things I think we did successfully is said, we don't really want to be part of this industry. We want to change the industry. And we're going to think differently. So we never associated with industry associations or industry norms. We basically totally ignored them throughout the whole growth of the company. Intuitively, I thought that was the right answer. In the long run, it proved to be correct. Because the more you get in tune with the industry, you become like in the movie Tucker, where the executive said, well, why would we want to do anything competition hasn't done? That's the mentality of bureaucrats and industry thinkers. So by thinking differently and slowly grinding it out and being, on one hand, trying to be high growth, on another hand, being fairly cautious in those decisions, because one wrong decision essentially is going to take you out. After we bought Rupp Industries, by 2001, we had achieved $100 million in sales. What's very interesting, if you went back to 1984 when we were $4 million in sales, I told our sales team we were going to be a $25 million company and then a $50 million company. And they literally thought it was so funny they couldn't contain themselves. They just laughed at the sales meeting. So what you find along the way is that very few people are going to have the vision. And then those who have the vision, very few will have the tenacity and basically the courage to keep going. And I think those are important lessons for anybody that wants to become an entrepreneur. It's not going to be easy, but it's fun and it's rewarding. You see your own growth, you see the growth of your people, and to me that's the most important thing. In 2002, we achieved $100 million in sales. And so as I'd always done in the past, without any real strategic plan or game plan, I said, well, we're going to double the size of the company. We're going to be $200 million 5 years out. And that was another little chuckle because they said, okay, well, you made it to $100 million. There's not that much business left out there. You're not going to make it to $200 million unless you acquire a company. I said, no, we're going to do it through organic growth. Well, this year we anticipate achieving $200 million in sales. And guess what? There's still a lot more out there because we continue to gain more technologies. We have more expertise. In the meanwhile, most of the inefficient competitors, good economic lesson, they're all out of business. They're all gone. So who's coming up? Tougher competition's coming up, which gives us the opportunity to train our people and be better. So you can actually see that process within the industry working exactly as the professors would state it in the textbook. I've witnessed it. So entrepreneurial growth is a lot of fun. It's very difficult. It's not for the faint-hearted. But I think that personal development is so rewarding. And I've seen it with people in the company where they come in at a low level and They grow, and they're so proud of themselves, how far they've come. And yet I see the other side where they say, you're too tough, you're too demanding, you're asking us things that nobody would ask us to do. And they say, well, this is the process, this is how it works. It's not easy. I also wanted to cover